This is a Momentum Media production.
Welcome to the Smart Property Investment Show, the podcast by investors for investors.
Well, g'day everyone, it's Garman here, Managing Editor of Real Estate at Momentum Media, the team that brings you the Smart Property Investment Show. And as always, I'm joined by my co-host,
Emilie, Lauer.
And months and months and months of that, and I still can't pronounce it, but that's why.
I think you're doing pretty well, to be honest.
Well, I know. I am getting my ads in French now after Googling so many foreign properties with you. But, you know, we've been doing this podcast for a few months now, and it's amazing that we haven't even dipped our toe into the world of flipping houses.
Yeah, and look, who doesn't want to flip a house and make it to your own taste? And, you know, some people, they want to flip and sell and make a buck out of it.
Well, I don't know if we're allowed to say a quick buck because nothing's granted, nothing's a given. But I am joined here, not in the podcast today, unfortunately, virtually, because he's all the way in Perth. Graham Whitfield, investor and founder of Redmayne Property Coaching. Graham, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Graham.
Thank you, guys. I'm happy to be here.
How's it going over in Perth? Nice, warm, sunny day, or what? What are we looking at?
It's pretty warm outside. Yeah, it's not bad. I mean, obviously we're in the middle of summer now, aren't we? So, yeah, not too many bad days in Perth during summer, so can't complain.
You know, I've been to Perth a fair few times, and it always wigs me out. It's like, I don't know if this is it like some weird developmental issue that I've got, but whenever I go to Perth and then the ocean's on the wrong side, you know, like it always wigs me out because you got, is it Cottesloe Beach?
Yeah, Cottesloe,
beautiful area of the world, and I've been there a few times, and it wigs me out because like north and south relative to the water are different. Maybe I've just got a problem, but it always, everyone's looking at me really weird. Apparently I'm the only one that has this issue.
Look, very controversial. I think Perth and Western Australian beaches are better than
they're pretty
Sydney
good.
ones.
Yeah, they're pretty good.
And it's also important to note that the ocean's on the correct side because we get the sunset over the water, which is more impressive.
True. That is true. I think there's a fair few people that have blinded themselves being on the beach, looking at, let's all go watch the sunset, and they just stare at the sun and blind themselves.
For sure.
Again, another one. Everyone's looking at me weird. All right. Well, anyway, moving on. Mate, so Graham, you started your career actually selling homes before moving into the FIFO industry. Now you're back into the world of property and flipping houses. So tell me, where did that love of property start? And if you're in property, why did you leave the sector?
Yeah, very good questions. Property's always been my love, my passion. Like, it's always been my motivator. But yeah, when I was, I suppose got into, selling new homes when I was about 26 or something, 25, I think. I did real estate for a year, and then I think I ended up doing new homes for about 9 years. So I did that for, most end of my 20s and up until my mid-30s. So it was great. It was a good income, loved it. But, the market in Perth was absolutely horrid, just before COVID. So from 2015 to 2020, it was negative growth every year in Perth, and it made selling homes pretty difficult the last couple of years. And, like I said, I did new homes for about 9 years. So by the end of it, I was pretty cooked, and I wanted to change, and I needed to figure out what I was going to do. And like I said, it wasn't as easy as it was before, making good money. So I decided to do FIFO. I did that for a couple of years while I sort of figured out what was next for me.
I find that so interesting. So on the East Coast, I think there's perhaps a misconception about investing and buying in Perth, where on the East Coast you have that idea that the WA market is so tied to the resources industry, and everyone has those kind of horror stories in their minds where you go out to a mining town, you buy an inflated property in a mining town, and then the local mine shuts up, and so you're left with an asset which just is making no return. That has just been completely devalued overnight. So a question about the market. So in the years leading up to COVID, you're saying it was going backwards a little bit. Why is that?
To be honest, it was after the resources finished.
So it is tied. Even in the major city, it's still tied to the resources.
Yeah. 100%. I mean, from about 2015, prices started tanking in Perth. Like the mining was pretty good. 2012, 13, 14, 15, and then when it sort of started coming off, Perth had negative growth from there to 2020. Even though the mine started, started booming again, I suppose, prior to COVID. You've got to remember, like, a lot of the mines weren't in construction and stuff like that, so therefore there wasn't as many jobs, like the mines were already active, so they're in production. So we still had an oversupply of property, both houses and units. And so because of that oversupply, after the other thing is as well with the mining at the time, like a lot of people left Perth after that mining boom. And then also we had a lot of people doing fly in, fly out from the East Coast. So even though the mines were really picking up from that, say 2017, 18, 19 or whatever, whenever they started picking up, even though that during that time, not all the money or not all the people were actually here in WA. So there was still there's still that oversupply for sure.
It seems to be a very big pivot from what my friends in Perth are saying at the moment, which is it almost feels like houses are really only on the market for a few minutes before they're already snapped up.
Yeah, 100%. It's been like that for a good couple of years, maybe 3 years now. Everything's been selling straight away. So yeah, but look, it's interesting. Like you speak to a lot of buyers agents and that sort of stuff, and they say like Perth is, the economy's evolved now, and we're not so reliant on resources. So yeah.
So Graham, you started flipping houses in 2021 after a tenant trashed your property, and that's I think a nightmare that everyone has. And since then, you've flipped 24 properties, making nearly $2 million in profit and building $1.4 million in equity. Mate, from your journey to date, what got you into the world of flipping? Of course, a tenant trashed your property. What made you see this, hey, this is a job that I want to get into, this is an investment strategy that I want to get into? And looking at your first few properties that you flipped, what were some of the challenges that you faced on that journey?
Yeah, okay, cool. So to just recap, so I've done 27 deals since 2021. Probably just over 2 million in profit now, and probably created almost 3 million in equity from the properties that I'm holding. Essentially, the way I sort of fell into it, I suppose, was like 2021. Like I had that property, that investment property that got pretty trash. It was a property I had for 10 years. It was, I was sort of in a situation where I knew the tenants weren't really looking after it. I was managing it myself. I wasn't really doing the inspections, but they were paying their rent every single week. And I suppose in 2021, I sort of finally went and had a look at the property, did an inspection, and I decided that I just needed to, the house was just beyond being able to, just tidy it up. It needed new kitchens, bathrooms, everything like that. So they'd really neglected it, and I probably had as well by not actually doing the inspections and so on. So, so that was how the journey all started for me. From there, obviously, I went on and did a program, got coaching and all that sort of stuff in the space, and threw myself into it. After a couple of deals, I decided that, I wanted to have a crack at this full time. So obviously, like I said, property was always a passion of mine. So I ditched the FIFO job and then went full time. And since then I've probably been doing, sort of 8 to 10 deals a year, and loving it. Not flipping all of them, flipping a lot of them, but keeping a few as well. I've actually got a couple of projects that I've got in the pipeline now, which will be more that buy, renovate, hold, and rent out. But definitely a dual strategy of both flipping and buy, renovating, and holding as well.
Well, Graham, I'm very curious because, when people think about flipping, they're most of the time either they go and flip themselves or they hire people. Did you do the work yourself? And if yes, did you have any knowledge about building beforehand, or did you learn on the go?
So I'm completely not handy at all, and it's funny because I have this conversation with everyone. Like I literally don't do any of the work at all. Like I've got a full trades team, so I've got every trade you can think of. Including I've got a good handyman, sparky, plumber, tiler, painter, carpenter. Like every single trade you can think. They do all the work for me, so I just basically project manage it and obviously schedule the trades in and everything like that. As far as experience, like obviously I sold new homes for builders. So I worked for builders for about 9 years, but selling homes and obviously knowing the construction side of things are two different things. So no, I wouldn't say I knew building at all. But what I did do is I sort of, especially the first few deals, I made sure I was on site a lot, connecting with, networking and connecting with the trades a lot, and just learning the process. So now I know the process inside out, obviously, but it obviously took a few deals to really understand, the process essentially from start to finish of a renovation for sure.
Well, so what are some of the lessons you've learned along the way?
Look, there's so many lessons. I mean, the first one is always about the numbers, right? I mean, I suppose it's, it's pretty obvious thing to think, but like a lot of people think you can just go and buy any old house on the market and do a renovation and sell it for a profit, and they forget to take into consideration everything from stamp duty to holding costs to, your, selling costs at the other end, your agent fees and all that sort of stuff. So the numbers is everything. That's probably the biggest lesson. If you get really good at feasibilities and stuff like that, that's going to be super helpful. On top of that, things like I just lost what I was talking about. um, yeah, another lesson I would say would be regarding like emotion and not getting too emotional. A lot of people, they get desperate to find a deal, so then they're trying to, they might sort of pay more for a deal than what they should be. So they might have done their numbers and they might have a walkaway price, but just because they're desperate to land that deal, they'll break the golden rule and go and pay too much for it, which essentially comes out of their bottom line. Other rules, that people break, along the same lines again with the emotion is that people often get emotional in the renovation and they think that they're, renovating their dream home, and then they end up over capitalizing and spending too much on the renovation. So, yeah, so I'd say the numbers and the emotion are probably the two biggest learnings for sure.
Now, one thing that you mentioned is those kind of transaction and holding costs that are associated, which it's not necessarily top of mind for a lot of investors, because if you had that buy and hold strategy and you're not intimately involved in flipping houses, you do kind of forget that, well, some of the value might be in realizing the capital gains from it, or if you're going for a sell strategy, but then you have to factor in the transaction costs associated with it. So if you're going to do a buy, renovate, hold strategy in those, I think it was 27 you said, I must have the old figures, you're doing so many at the moment, with some of the houses that you've held on to and you're now renting out, what are some of the increases in rent that you've seen comparative from before to after the renovation?
I mean, obviously, the houses that I've pretty much bought, they hasn't because they're typically, when you're buying them with an owner occupier. So it's not like doing the renovation has obviously, it's not like it was already rented out before. So I can't say, it was getting X amount and now it's getting this amount, because most of the time I'm not buying houses from renters, because there's obviously a lease in place and I wouldn't be able, not have a holding time or something like that. So I'm always dealing with owner occupiers typically when I buy the projects. But look, I mean, obviously the rental market Australia-wide has been pretty good the last few years as well. Like, rents have been going up everywhere. So Perth has been very much the same. So it's a hard question to really answer. But look, there's no doubt if you renovate a house and everything's new versus a house that's, either unrenovated or, original condition, there's no doubt that you're going to, your rental yield's going to be considerably better. There's no question about that.
Can you give us a ballpark?
Oh, like I'd say you'd have to be able to get, I would at least $150 a week extra in rent. I would have thought.
Yeah, that's massive.
Yeah.
That is a huge difference to the lease. And sorry, I'm jumping in, Emily, but one other question I've got. See, I love this because when we talk, it's just like the synapses in your brain are connected. So what about this? What about this? You've got that team of tradies around you, and one common thing that we hear from a lot of investors is that still dodgy tradie thing where they're like, oh, we'll pay you X for concreting of a new driveway, and they just run away and never come back. How do you navigate that? How do you surround yourself with tradies that you're going to get a good return and they're going to give you value for money?
Yeah, so most of my trades I've had for, since I started, like since 2021, some of them early 2022, but, I've had a couple of trades along the way, or very, very early days, not along the way, like early days that let me down, and then I just didn't use them again. And when I say let me down, like, I had one carpenter or cabinet maker who didn't get the job done, and he was a week late, and then he was 2 weeks late, and so I sort of just, got rid of him. And had another painter who, his house, he actually painted a couple of other houses for me, and then this one was just absolutely terrible. So I just sort of, sent him a message, don't come back, changed the lockbox code and got a new painter in. So you're obviously going to get a couple early, but the trick is that you want to build a good team. So like now, all my trades are like, like I'm almost mates with them. Like, like in December, I took them out on my boat and we went out and had like a Christmas party. Do you know what I mean? So they all know each other. Like, because I've done 27 deals in the last few years, most of them have at least done 22 or 23 with me. Like my handyman and my tiler have been with me since the very first deal, which was that investment property that got trashed. So they all know me really well. Like it's not like just that business relationship now. There's that, friend rapport as well. So but they're appreciative of the work. Obviously, tradespeople had that issue of getting paid. Like we might have an issue of wanting good work, but good tradesmen also have an issue of getting paid well and on time and that sort of stuff. So, the relationship goes two ways. If they, as soon as they do the job, if you pay them straight away, they're gonna they're gonna prioritize you ahead of everyone else. And when you keep giving people more work and they like working for you, then it's really, really easy to schedule them for the next job.
On average, how much money do you put in one reno?
Yeah, good question. Look, most of the renos, like if I'm doing if I'm gutting everything out, anywhere between sort of 60 and 90K would be a reno cost. Like, your double brick construction homes, there's a fair few of those over in Perth. They're a little bit cheaper. You're not having to do much asbestos removal. You're not having to do much resheet and all that sort of stuff because it's internal double brick and stuff. If there's not much backyard or front yard stuff, obviously, again, like you're saving money if the yard's not too bad, if you can sort of, maintain what you've got. But, if I have to do full clear the backyard and front yard, grass rejig front and back, at the top end it's like 90, but at the bottom end probably 60. And 60K would be, like I said, maybe like a double brick house where I'm just putting in new kitchen, bathroom, laundry, flooring, lighting, all that sort of stuff. But I'm not having to worry about yard and stuff like that. And then there's also more of like a tidy up renovation. So I've done a couple of, you get lucky every now and then you buy buy a property and it doesn't need that full renovation. And you might be able to get away with, 15 to 30 where you're just really fixing things and tidying things up essentially. So that would be maybe like improving the existing kitchen rather than putting a brand new kitchen in, or improving the bathroom without putting a brand new bathroom in, or just having to maintain the gardens and not, there's no new grass retic, all that sort of stuff.
Well, let's go on the other side. Did you have any crazy story where the reno costed way much more than you anticipated?
Yeah, so I've had one deal that didn't work out. Yeah, and that was that one. And that was pretty early on. Like I reckon it was about deal 6 or 7. And it was it was in Fremantle. So most people would know Fremantle because, Fremantle Dockers sort of thing. Fremantle's obviously our port in Perth. So it was a good suburb. It was right on the border of East Fremantle, which is a slightly more expensive area. But what I got wrong, and it was definitely required a high-end reno, and I ended up spending about 200 on the reno, but it wasn't the reno budget blowout that got me, which it probably did blow out by about 50K, but it wasn't the reno budget that got me. What got me was the type of house it was. And in this particular area, there was a lot of character homes, and this house wasn't a character home, and it was also 2-story. And this particular area was very much a downsizer area, but also very much a young professionals area because location and stuff like that. Anyway, long story short, when I went to market, we were about 3 or 4 interest rates in 2022 when the interest rate started going up, and all of a sudden the market freaked out. And this was before Perth started having its run, and the market went to sleep. And the only people coming through the home opens were the downsizers and the young professionals that all, because the interest rates they'd gone to sleep. And then the downsizers were like, they didn't like it because it was a 2-story house and had a spiral staircase. Yeah, so that's my only bad experience out of 27 deals.
Yeah. And just going back to the houses you hold, how do you choose which one you're going to keep for yourself and hold and rent and the one you're going to sell?
Well, early days, when I quit FIFO, I was basically just, I had no income, right? Because I was going, flipping was now my income. It was my full-time business. So everything was just a flip because I was, building cash flow. And obviously, I didn't have that day job, didn't have any other income. So that was sort of back to square one, didn't have any investment properties. But obviously my goal was to start building a portfolio again. But for me, a lot of the places or a lot of the suburbs where I was flipping, although they were having great growth, they weren't really suburbs I wanted to hold in. Like they were more like the lower end suburbs in Perth. And I just didn't want to, I could have held a lot of those properties, but I just didn't want property in those suburbs where they were like majority investors that owned in there. So, and also just that the quality of the tenants wasn't what I was chasing either. So, so the properties that I've held have just been in some better locations or better areas, essentially. So, one of them it's been a development. So I'm keeping all of those. There was another one, I picked up a really great house in a real blue chip suburb. That was really good. Another one was a unit again, close to relatively close to the city. That was a good one. I've got a couple more that I'm about to settle this year or probably in February. Again, just better location. So for me, it's for holding the property. It's more about probably more blue chip suburbs that are more probably more owner occupier type suburbs that I'm wanting to hold on to, rather than outer suburbs which are more cheaper, but also even though the rental yield's better, they're just more there's a high percentage of investors in the market. And then and my thinking is with what's happened in the Perth market over the time, if Perth does hurt or does go through that downturn, it's always when people leave Perth, they leave, and then all of a sudden the investors start selling. So those suburbs typically hurt more in Perth than what your more owner-occupier suburbs do.
Now, obviously, you're going through quite a lot of stock here. How do you source all the properties? Are these listed, or are you going for off-market purchases?
Yeah, all off-market. I think out of the 27, and like I said, I've got two under contract. So I have 29 that I've off-sourced or secured who have been on market. One of those was which I actually picked up on Christmas Eve, the 2 days before Christmas.
Merry Christmas, nice.
No, not this Christmas. It was a couple of years ago, but that was one of the on market ones that I got and the reason I secured it was because there was no one around, and then there was only one other property that I got on market, and the reason I got that one on market was because it went under contract, and then the sale fell through, and then there was a bit of an issue between the tenant and the owner, and the seller, and they couldn't get the home open. So the real estate agent came back to me and said, "Hey, are you still interested in this property? We can't take it to market again." So they're the only two properties I've purchased on market. I don't
think I've ever seen such a distressed sale in my life as Christmas Eve.
Yeah. I picked up another one on Christmas Eve, which was off market a couple of years ago. Funnily enough, that was actually a bank mortgagee. It was actually a guy I went to school with, and he was a real estate agent. Coincidentally, I bumped into him at a home open, and I told him what I did. And then this was like, not this Christmas, the Christmas before. He called me up and said, "Hey, I've got this property for you if you want to come have a look at it." And again, it was funnily enough, even though it was a bank mortgagee, it was off market. Found out later, it was a bit of a funny story actually, but found out later the reason why it was being sold off market is because the guy who had the house possessed from him, he was a bit of a loony because he started going around to the property once and I owned it and trying to evict my tenant. But anyway, story so off market is where the goal is. You always buy property a lot better off market. And the way to get off market properties is one, through agent relationships. A lot of really good opportunities never make the market. So, especially if the houses are run down, real estate agents know that the only person who's going to buy the property is a renovator. So they want to typically, and quite often they'll have relationships with renovators. So therefore, rather than their seller paying marketing fees and all the rest of it, they'll, potentially sell it off market to someone that they've got on their books. And the other thing that I've had a lot of success with is letterbox drops. So I just let people know what I do, and then I buy off market, and then people call me and we go around and we negotiate.
Wow. You're sourcing your own leads.
Old school.
Yeah. That's majority of what I do. So, yeah.
Now, on the money front, how much for investors that are interested? So say you're an investor and you've dipped your toe into the regular kind of buy-hold strategy. What profit could someone potentially look at for their first time flipping a house?
So, it can be crazy. It depends on the market.
I suppose that's a bit of a how long's a piece of string question. But.
Yeah. So I pretty much say, like I said, on my profit has been just over 2 million now in the last few years. So, and I've done 27 deals, but I've kept some. So I've probably averaged close to 100, maybe not that quite, but close to 100 per flip. But I tell people anywhere between 50 and 150 per deal. Best I've had, one student in my program last year made 270K on a profit. So 270K profit on a deal.
Nice.
Purchased for 550, sold it for 970. Obviously, there was a renovation cost in there and, the rest of it, but profit afterwards. I had another student, actually 2 students in the program who killed it as well. They made 350 on a deal, but that was not just a straight reno. What they actually did was they actually bought a duplex pair, and they were on one title. So they were really run down. So they renovated the duplex both sides, and then they separated the titles, and then they sold the duplex each, and they made 350 on that. But still, unlike a development which takes 2 years, 3 years, it was still a pretty quick turnaround for them. So, so that's a couple of really good deals for you.
Look, Graham, there's the saying that in flipping you make a quick buck. Do you really make a quick buck, or is the process long or longish?
Yeah, so the process is not long. Like I'm typically I'll give you, so the last 2 deals I've done, total hold time for me has been, one was 64 days and the other was 78 days hold time. So I'm talking, so my renos are typically anywhere between 4 and 6 weeks. And because the market's been hot, everything's been selling first home open. So then if I've got a cash buyer, they could be settling in 3 weeks' time. But if they're finance, they could be 21 days finance and 21 days settlement. So worst in the last 3 years, I've obviously had that one project I told you in Fremantle, which was a nightmare. But apart from that, I've never had a deal take longer than 4 months from settlement to settlement, and in most cases, yeah, less than 90 days from settlement to settlement. But that's because I schedule, like I give myself, because I've got a trades team who obviously can do the work. Even when I started out, I gave myself enough time to settle on the deal. And then I used to typically give myself like 60 days. And that means I could schedule in all my trades. So the day that I settle, the next day the trades guys are in there doing work. And when you know your process from start to finish, you know which trades can be there at the same time, and you can have your trades back to back. And if you can rely on your trades and they don't let you down, like I said, I can gut a house, basically rip everything out, new kitchen, new bathroom, new laundry, new flooring, paint inside and out, grass and retic, new lighting, roller blinds. I can do that in 5-6 weeks.
That's insane. I can see Emilie thinking. I can,
Yeah.
I can see her doing the maths in her head. 90 days from settlement to settlement. It's insane.
It's insane. And I used to watch, flipping houses and all those TV shows. So it's my dream to flip a house.
Yeah. It seems like you make it seem too easy, Graham.
Yeah.
When you know the process, it is easy. So, but to be fair, like when it comes to the profits, like you've got to take into consideration the market as well. So, so when I do my feasibilities, like Perth, we've been in a boom, but every time I do my feasibility on a new project, I always do it on the numbers now. So I'm not taking into consideration, projected growth. So for me, for example, like I might do the numbers now. Okay, if I sell this property tomorrow, it's going to achieve X amount. So, I'm going to make 70 or 80K on this profit. But then if the market comes along and does a bit of extra heavy lifting, great. I make 100, 110, 120 on the deal. So, so once you know the process, it is, the key is to obviously project manage it and, hand off everything. So you're not doing any of the work. You're just overseeing it, and you spend your time finding new deals rather than, being hands on. A lot of tradies say to me, "Oh, look, I'd be really good at this. I can do the reno myself." I'm like, the worst thing you could do is do the work yourself, because that's going to prevent you from finding more deals, and the reno is going to take longer because you're doing everything. You might save an extra, 30 grand or whatever, and you're not paying other trades and stuff like that, but it's going to cost you more in the long run.
Oh, especially if you've got that whole strategy at the end as well. I mean, some of the work that people produce is really bad. You might be a tradie, but you're not a tradie of all trades. You're not a master of all trades. So you're bound to have some kind of weakness. Now we're going to go to a quick break, and when we're back, we will be talking to Graham about some advice that he can offer people interested in flipping, and we'll be back in just a second. I'm joined by Graham Whitfield, founder of Redmayne Property Coaching, and we are discussing flipping houses. Now, Graham, you've started a property flipping course and a coaching program called Redmayne. Talk us through that program and why it's so important that people that are looking to flip houses can partner with someone with a little bit of expertise in the field.
Yeah, for sure. Look, to be honest, when I started, I did a course and a program, right? So I understood what was involved in doing that. And obviously I learned a lot from, when I did it as a program. There's no way I could have done what I had done without the program that I did, because there's no way I would have understood the whole, the feasibilities and the numbers and the process. And I wouldn't have understood money partners and seller joint venture deals and all the creative, stuff that goes into property deals. So basically I started just, as a full rookie, just started sharing the content on what I was doing and the results I was having with my deals. And I just started getting people randomly asking me to coach them. And then I was like, okay, cool. Like I'll take on some people one-on-one coaching. And before I quickly realized how hard it was, I was like, gee, these people that I'm taking on as a client know nothing. And I'm literally having to teach them a course on coaching sessions. So from there I was like, okay, well, what I'll do is I'll create a course, and then they can do the course, and then I can coach them because they've got a base, because they can watch my recordings of my course, and when we have a coaching session, that they have a fair idea of what's going on, or what I'm talking about. And then anyway, it's just gone nuts. But the program has just gone crazy, and it's only been going since I launched the program in October 2023. So we're about, so 16 months in or something like that. And we've got students all around the country, got heaps of students doing really well. Yeah, it's great. I mean, the importance is the community. Like, we have multiple coaching sessions a week, so it's more of a group coaching program. We've got myself and two other coaches. One of us does a Monday, one does Wednesday. I do the Wednesday night, and another coach does a Thursday. So we've got myself and Michelle who are Perth based, and then we've got another Haley and Andrew who are Brisbane based. And so we've got between us coaches, I think we've done like 90 deals or something stupid, it's 80 deals or something stupid. Yeah, there's a lot of experience in the coaches. So the students can come along and essentially the way the coaching sessions are designed is you've got help me sessions where students can literally bring a feasibility and get help or Q&A. We've got other students other sessions where students are sharing their deals and their learnings and all that sort of stuff, which other students are learning and taking information from. And then we've got other sessions which are more like based on our coursework. So we might be specific, talking about money partners or talking about JVs or talking about market research or due diligence, feasibilities, all that sort of stuff. So, and then there's obviously a Facebook community for the students where they get stuck, they can ask questions, and then the coaches or more experienced students in the program can help answer the questions. Yeah, there's just having that support and that network. It just obviously makes things a lot easier than trying to figure it out on your own and making mistakes, which cost you money.
Now, I don't think you're going to be giving away too much, maybe a little bit of a teaser. For someone who's listening to this podcast and might be thinking, well, okay, this might be something that I can diversify my investment journey with. What are your top 3 key pieces of advice for people who are thinking about starting their flipping journey?
Well, I suppose the first thing is research, right? You want to make sure that if you're going to get a mentor, I'd say firstly get a mentor, whether that's us or somebody else, get a mentor. If it's going to cost you X amount of dollars, I can assure you, you're going to make that money back by, in your first deal, and you're going to save money because you're not going to make the mistakes that you would otherwise. So definitely get a mentor. Like I said, it doesn't matter who it is, but make sure that mentor has runs on the board. There's a lot of programs out there where the coaches have done friggin' 2 or 3 deals and all of a sudden they're a coach. That's not a coach. Like I wouldn't have coached anyone in my first year, and I did 7 deals in my first year because I was still learning. So you need to be learning from someone who has got the runs on the board essentially. Second tip I'd be saying is when it comes to flipping, make sure you do your market research. So I always talk about, being like an area expert and having a farming area. So, and what that means is to be a property flipper, you need to know the market so intimately. You need to know the suburb or the suburbs that you're working really, really not well. You need to know where the better parts in the suburbs. You need to be really confident in your numbers. And the only way you're going to be confident in your numbers if you're like an area expert. And when I say area expert, I mean, you need to be as good as the real estate agent. You need to know the area as well as the real estate agent. So you need to have those relationships with other experts like real estate agents and so on to make sure that you're getting things right and so on. So that's another tip. Another tip I'd say would be having the right structure in place. Comes up all the time, aren't you paying 50% capital gains tax? And the answer is no, because I run it as a business and I buy property in a company. So therefore, company tax rates apply. I'm not an accountant, so seek accounting and taxation advice. But yeah, there are a few lessons I'd say is definitely get yourself a mentor, get a really good mentor, have the right structure set up accounting-wise, so that way you're minimising tax when you're running it as a business. And then, 3 is choose your farming area, wisely. That area, make sure you do your market research, but really as well, make sure that you're in an area that's at least neutral, if not, ideally maybe moderate or strong growth. You don't want to be flipping in an area where there's prices are falling and you buy the property now and then in 3 months' time when you go to market, it's worth less than what you're allowed in your fees are.
And your point about putting it under a company is really pertinent, because actually, as you were talking before, I was you were talking about the figures here and there. I'm like, when you factor in CGT, what changes it? So it's a good lesson to learn.
Yeah, I'm wondering, is there, because when we listen to you, look, it seems like a dream, yeah? You go, you flip houses, you make some money, you keep some for yourself. Is there any disadvantage or any inconvenience to flipping houses?
I suppose the disadvantage of is like, even though you might be realizing the money now, if you held the property and did more like a BRRRR strategy, buy, renovate, rent out, refinance, sort of repeat sort of thing, or buy, renovate, hold, then obviously, that property will keep growing in value. So, I mean, if I look at a lot of the properties that I flipped, God, if I had held them and had them all now, that might, I'd be worth a lot more money. So so flipping, like for me, because I left my FIFO job and went into this, like I wanted to make as much money as possible, and flipping was great because it was able to provide me that large, chunks of money and so on. So, but the disadvantage is that you're in and out of the deal, you get paid now, and you're missing out on future growth. So that's definitely one disadvantage. I mean, as far as you have to obviously be, you have to be an expert in the field and know the process and all that sort of stuff. You need to be like a really good prospector. Like one of the biggest issues that people have is sourcing the deal. Like you don't need to be handy, you don't need to have renovation experience, you don't need none of that. But what you need to be good at is finding deals. You need to be someone who can speak to an off-market seller and put together the deal and take control of the process and all that sort of stuff. So if that's a weakness for you, then that's you might find it a little bit more tough. But yeah, I don't think there's a whole lot of negatives. I think there's just a lot of things that you need to learn and get good at.
Now, when you're not flipping yourself, I know we touched on the tradie example before. What's your advice to people as they source their builders?
Well, obviously, you just want to make sure that you've got trades who have good reviews, or ideally, if you can get people that are referred to you, then that they've done good work for somebody else. Make sure they've got their insurances in place, because you don't want any, like you said before, dodgy ones or anything like that. Obviously trades like electricians and plumbers obviously need to be licensed anyway. So again, you want to make sure that you're using licensed trades for those sorts of people. So you just want to make sure that they're accountable. And that they do what they say. Make sure you're not giving money in advance. So if trades are asking for money up front, that's a bit of a red flag for me, because what's to say they're not going to come and do the job? I can understand if you're, depending on the work, like let's say, for example, you're buying carpet, the carpet place is going to want, money up front because they're literally providing the carpet so depending on what the materials are, like they might want some money up front. But my thing is I typically always source the materials myself. That way I'm not paying markup, because trades would typically pay, charge you an extra 20-25% for a markup if they're providing the supplies and so on. So yeah, so that's another one is definitely make sure that you're in control of everything and not handing over money, and making sure that you're buying things at wholesale. You've got trade accounts and stuff like that with suppliers, and not paying retail and stuff like that as well.
Never pay retail. We're going to go to a quick break, and when we're back, get out your checkbooks, because we're going to look at what the new hotspots are. We'll be back in just a second.
At Invictus Australia, we're all about supporting veterans and their families through the power of sport. Whether it's helping veterans stay connected with their local communities, assisting them in their transition to civilian life, or promoting mental and physical well-being, we're here to support them. From grassroots programs to international sporting competitions, Invictus Australia empowers veterans to take on new challenges, stay active and thrive. Join us in building a stronger, more inclusive community through sport, because together we are unconquerable. Visit invictusaustralia.org to find out more.
It's the team from the Smart Property Investment Show here with Graham Whitfield talking about flipping houses. And Graham, this is the hot question, because everyone's talking about location at the moment. Are there even any areas left in Australia that are going to be hotspots for renos? Now, whether you're looking to have a buy, renovate, sell, buy, renovate, hold strategy, location's going to be key. How do you go about finding what area you're going to buy in?
And so I'm very big on data. So I've got a property analyst that I put a lot of faith into, I suppose, and I really like the data that he provides. So I definitely make my buying decisions a lot, based on the information that he provides. Look, there's other property analysts out there as well that are obviously really good at what they do. So I think when it comes to knowing, timing the market and picking areas that are going to have that strong growth, data's critical. That's probably one of the biggest lessons I've had in my whole real estate life. Is I bought property in 2000, and my first property in 2009 as an investment property. I bought another one in 2010. I think I bought another one in 2013. And from literally post GFC, 2008 to 2020, the median house price in Perth was like the same. Like we went up a little bit and then we came back down. So that was a massive learning for me, is that you can't just go out and buy property anywhere. You need to look at the data and buy in the right location. So yeah, so although it was a terrible 10 years of property investing for me, it was crucial in where I am today, because it made me realise just how important using data is and buying in the right locations to get the growth.
Do you still have those properties?
No.
I was going to say, oh, at least on the bright side, if it was, over 10 years ago now, you would have paid off half of it, But,
yeah.
And the market's booming.
So basically, we were in a pretty tough spot, because when I went FIFO, my income reduced, and we had in 2019, my wife, we had our twin boys, so we were in a pretty position that we'd never been in prior, and so we had 3 negatively geared properties, all with negative equity. So after when that COVID boom started to happen, I offloaded those 3 properties, and that's when at the same time I really started flipping. And yeah, I suppose I just I spent a lot of money on my education and so on to be able to make the right decisions going forward.
Well, that seems reasonable, because a lot of people do have that that notion of, hold on. There was on a recent podcast a few weeks ago with Sam Gordon, where he says, what was his line? It was like, treat it like a rugby team, treat it like a football team. If you've got an underperforming player, sub them out, get a new player in, so they perform for you. So
that's a good analogy. There's one of those properties I wish I had held, but the other 2, yeah, no, I'm glad I offloaded them. So,
but I think that comes to emotion, yeah. Like you were talking about it before, like the emotion impacting your decision making, whether you want to hold that property because you're attached to it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it all comes down to running it as a business, really. Like, don't just hold on to a property because it's your property. Like, don't have that emotional connection. If it's not working for you, then why have it, sort of thing. There's always, and it's like, if you look at, like, I'll use the Perth market again. Like, we had 10 years of bad years in the real estate market. If you look at it from 2009, post GFC, when house prices had just doubled in Perth, till COVID 2020, there was no real growth. So, if you had properties, if you had a sold at the end of that, 2009, and realised your profits then, and then gone and invested in Sydney or Melbourne or Brisbane, you would have done a whole lot more. Sydney or Melbourne at the time, you would have done so much better than having to, just held on to those properties in Perth that did nothing for such a long time. So, yeah.
Have you ever invested and reno in another state, or only in WA?
No. So my plan this year is to start doing some stuff in Melbourne. So even though I know Melbourne's going to be a little bit before there's growth, I feel like there's going to be good opportunity there over the next few years. So my plan is to do some buy reno holds.
So, mate, talk us through the Melbourne. It seems like every time I go out for lunch or something, or a coffee with people that work in property, they're always like, I'll give Melbourne a go, maybe late 2025, maybe. What are your thoughts on the Melbourne market?
Yeah, well, I mean, I definitely still think there's a fair bit of tough times ahead. I mean, obviously, there's the land taxes that have been, there's a lot of investors still getting out of the market there. But, and it's obviously slid down the median house price, like the likes of Perth and Adelaide and Brisbane have all overtaken Melbourne. So Melbourne, I know you can't just judge it on being a big city and that it should be more expensive or anything like that. I know you've got to look at, fundamentals and so on, but I just feel like it won't stay down for long. And I think it's going to come good. And this happened like, 10 years ago to Melbourne. Melbourne slipped down and then it had its run again. It's all part of the cycle. So I just feel like there's already a lot of buyers agent activity in Melbourne, especially the cheaper areas. There's, a lot of suburbs in the north and the west that buyers agents are already jumping on, and they're already having some moderate growth or some, a little bit of growth. So yeah, I feel like it's that city that's going to be the outperformer within the next few years. Like I said, it might not happen this year, but I just feel like it'd be like buying in Perth in 2019, where you could have, house prices were half of what they are now. So I think that it's a good opportunity to to buy some properties there and then, buy at the bottom of the market and then realise some good profits in the years to come.
Oh, look, I totally agree. I think there's going to be that aspect of arbitrage for investors where if you say compare the yield that you get in, let's say you go to a very posh part of Sydney, the yield that you get there relative to a yield that you would get on the outskirts of Perth, for example, your yield on the outskirts of Perth is going to be far, far, far higher. You're always going to see money shift to where that yield is. And in those outer suburbs of Perth, that's where you're getting that 20%, that 25% capital gains year on year. Money will go to where you're going to have the best yields. And of course, when you have that capital gains in those outer suburbs, that's now gone up 25%. Well, the yields actually, it doesn't track up 25% as well. It doesn't stay static. So, no, I totally agree. I think it makes sense when you see the money flow from city to city in Australia that Melbourne is due for a bump. It just depends when.
Yeah, 100%. And if you think of like property investing, like, like say 10 years ago or 20 years ago, like, early 2000s, mid 2000s, people only really invested in their backyard, right? If you were from Sydney, you invested in Sydney. If you were from Melbourne, you invested in Melbourne. If you're in Perth, you invest in Perth. But, it's kind of been that last, really in the last 5 years, maybe 10, with the evolution of, property analysts and definitely buyers agents, it's made investing interstate easier for people. There's a lot more, obviously, social media now, so people can be more educated and get that access to the data and know where to find and all that sort of stuff. So I think now, like if you look at what's been happening, there's so much East Coast investment in Perth over the last few years, and Northern Queensland, there's been so much East Coast investment, and in investing in the likes of Townsville and Rockhampton and these places. So and that's just going to continue, right? Like it's going to be buyers agents are already starting to turn to Melbourne. Like even though the growth might not be there yet, they know it's coming. So it's good buying. It's better to buy at the bottom of the market if there's growth not too far away versus buying in a market where there's already had heavy growth and you're coming close to the ceiling. Do you know what I mean? So or close to the top. So I think definitely diversifying your portfolio and stuff like that is super important.
So where does that left you? Is there any new property flipping coming soon or a holding period? What's next?
So I've obviously got 2 more projects in Perth, which to start probably in February. I'm just waiting on one of them. I think probate's just been issued, so we're waiting on that because it was a deceased estate. So that one's a buy, renovate, hold for me, and I'm actually going to do something I haven't done before. Put a granny flat on that one. And then I'm going to rent both of them out. I picked it up for a great price. So I picked it up in a suburb called East Cannington for $400. So yeah, really, really good price, like way under market. It'll be worth $700 on completion. And I'll probably spend about 60 or 70 on that one. That's without the granny flat. And then I've just got another one literally under contract before I came on here with you guys today, like literally this morning. I've been working with these sellers since November. And I just picked up another property in Kingsley, in the suburb of Kingsley, for $700, which is a better suburb, more of a blue chip suburb. But again, 800 square metre block, so I'll be putting a granny flat on that one. So both of these properties are pretty average. They need a full renovation and full reno, and then I'll just increase that yield, have the granny flat on both of them. I'm also moving down to the southwest of WA, so I actually leave in about 9 days, and my property analyst is telling me that there's going to be some strong market growth in that region as well. So my plan is to do a few more buy reno holds down there, but maybe look at some short-term rentals instead of, because obviously it's more of a tourist destination. And then, like I said, I'm also planning on doing some stuff in Melbourne myself as well. So I'm just going to slow down. Obviously, I've got the coaching program. I'm pretty fortunate. I've got some, good income from that business now. So I'm still going to continue to do what I'm doing with the buy reno, make sure I'm buying under market, make sure I'm, adding value through renovation, but rather than flipping, I will rent them out and then show more people. I've obviously got a Facebook group, which is Flipping House Australia, has 40,000 people on it. I've shared a lot of what I've done over the last, year and a half since that Facebook's been going. So, but a lot of it's been geared around flipping, and I definitely want to start showing people how they can how they can accelerate their portfolio by doing the buy, renovate, hold, by buying under market and manufacturing growth rather than paying retail and then waiting for that growth essentially.
That's fantastic. And Graham, I think you've given our listeners a lot to think about throughout the podcast. Mate, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
No worries at all. Appreciate it. Had fun.
It's been Liam Garman and Emilie Lauer. And that is all we have time for today on the Smart Property Investment Show. But until next time, bye-bye.
The information featured in this podcast is general in nature and does not take into consideration your financial situation or individual needs and should not be relied upon. Before making any investment, insurance, tax, property or financial planning decision, you should consult a licensed professional who can advise whether your decision is appropriate for you. Guests appearing on this podcast may have a commercial relationship with the companies mentioned.